And we welcome the general manager of the Dubuque Fighting Saints here to the show, Kalle Larsson. Kalle, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much for having me, Jack. I'm excited to talk some hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a long time we were trying to talk hockey without any certainty. Now we can start talking hockey with a lot of certainty, and that's not just the certainty of a start date for the season, but a lot of certainty as to what the opponents will be as the USHL schedule just recently coming out. The schedule's been in the works for a long time, and with a couple of teams unfortunately dropping out of the season, there was a fairly lengthy delay with that schedule. But now that the schedule is finally out, how nice is it to know exactly what you're working towards on November 6th?
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. There's been so many different versions of the schedule coming and going here over the summer too that we've been reviewed, and obviously with changes in the league participants in terms of teams, it changed last second. But now that we have it and we can look forward to actually finalizing some dates, and stuff like that, it's super exciting. I love our schedule, I like the competitiveness of it, and we're ready to go.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into the schedule because no matter if you're playing Muskegon 10 times this year versus 10 times last year, they're going to be a different team. But it's going to be a little bit different schedule for Dubuque simply because two of the closest opponents when it comes to geographical proximity in Cedar Rapids and Madison aren't going to be in the league this year. What do you like, though, about being able to play maybe a team like a Muskegon and Youngstown a little bit more, considering you don't see them usually as much during the regular season?
I mean, it's like you said, the league changes so much year to year, and who's good and who's having a rebuilding year, etc. That it's really hard to know before the season starts who's going to be what. But for us, yeah, it's always exciting to play teams that we don't see as often. I think it's exciting for our fans. I think it's exciting for the players. So whoever we do play, if it's close teams like Madison, CR, or if it's teams a little bit further away, Youngstown, and Muskegon, it doesn't really matter. I think changing it up a little bit is exciting, and that's what we got this year with playing Muskegon 10 times, and we look forward to it. They're going to have a really, really good competitive team, at least on paper, and we look forward to those battles.
Some teams are only playing games in their conference, Youngstown being as far east as they are. They're only playing Eastern Conference opponents. Teams like Fargo and Tri-City only playing Western Conference opponents. Since Dubuque is more or less in the middle of where the USHL teams reside, there are a couple Western Conference opponents on the schedule. And how big do you think it is for the fans and for the players to still be able to play Waterloo and continue that rivalry even in a different type of schedule?
I think it's really important. Waterloo has been one of the best teams in the league for, a long time, even before, long before I came into this league there, and PK O'Hanley and Shane Fukushima has put a competitive team together for 15, 20 years. And I think playing against the best teams is the most exciting thing. And again, it's a rivalry with our fans. We have our fans traveling to their building, their fans traveling to ours. And it's a serious competitive battle every time we play them. So I'm excited that they're still on our schedule, even though the league went with the more regionalized schedule this year. Same thing with Des Moines. It's also fairly close to us, and we had some good battles with them over the years, and we look forward to continuing that.
So November 6th, the start date, it will be a home game against the Muskegon Lumberjacks. That news coming out just recently with the USHL schedule. And as we both talked about, exciting to have that first date and opponent now set in stone for the Fighting Saints. But the main reason for this talk is to kind of give fans an idea of what to expect this year, because as we mentioned, there's a ton of turnover no matter what team you're on every single season in the USHL. And this year we have a good amount of returning players, but also a good amount of new faces coming into training camp, which will be starting here very shortly. I know each player brings a different skill set to camp, but if you could try to sum up the group that's coming into camp as best you could as a whole, what would this team look like in terms of a group description?
This is we have more young players on this team than we ever had before. We have 6 players born 2003, where 2 or 3 of them are late birthday 03s, so that's new for us. That's exciting. That's on purpose. That's something we want to do. But also with that, we have a good returning core. Braden Doyle coming back unexpectedly. We thought he was going to go into BU, and him coming back, that's huge. Stephen Halliday coming back, same thing there. Maybe he was going to go to North Dakota. He's coming back. So we like the mix. It's going to be interesting to see with so many young players what that means. because they are all super talented, but it takes some time to get used to the USHL, and we got to be patient with those guys. But overall, I think we have a balanced team. I think we're going to be competitive every night. I think last year, with Gaber, Ty and Dylan, we had a lot of returning guys that we knew could put the puck in the net. I think that will be curious to see this year who's going to take those roles. But in terms of defense and depth and balance, I think we're looking pretty strong.
Yeah, you mentioned the defense. Last year, the main returning pieces were up front. This year, the more experienced returning pieces are on the back end. When you look at Michael Feenstra, Ian Pierce, you mentioned Braden Doyle already, and then Evan Stella. Just between the four of them, right there is over 150 games of USHL experience from last season. And we know this is a league that puts a premium on defense. So how big is it to have four right there who not only have the USHL experience, but all experience the same success on the same team last year?
I mean, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, you can't put a value on experience. And like I said, the only way to get experience in the USHL is to play in the USHL. So it doesn't matter if you play in a different league. When you come into the USHL, it's going to take some time before you're into the league. And those four guys have been through it. They know what we're about. They were all excited to come back. So it's something we're excited about, and we look forward to all those guys to take a step forward and be even more impactful this year than they were last year.
And when you talk about experience on the back end, it doesn't just end with the immediate experience from last year's team. You do have some other players who have played in the USHL or different junior leagues. Henry Thrun has 2 years USHL experience with the NTDP, 1 year NCAA experience with Harvard. He'll join the squad this year. And then you brought in the MJHL Defenseman of the Year in Drake Bergman, and you've had some good success bringing players from the MJHL. Most recently, Matthew Thiessen and Reese Gaber are a couple names that pop to mind for fans. For each of those players in Drake and Henry, what do they bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, what Henry brings is obviously, I mean, he brings an elite attribute as being a top-end player in the age group in the United States. And in addition to that, he's a great fit for us culturally. He did his due diligence with us, and we talked to him at length before we knew this was going to be a fit, and it certainly was. So we expect Henry to, he's a Dubuque rookie, but he's not a rookie in any other category. Yep. We expect him to lead from day one. He adds an element of a veteran presence, just an all-round great defenseman that we think is going to be, we hope is going to be one of the top D in the league. And with Drake, same thing there. Like you said, we've had some success with guys from the Manitoba League. He's older. He's a right shot guy. He skates really well. He puts up points. Again, drafting him, we weren't sure exactly if Braden Doyle was going to come back. We needed a power play guy, and he fits that as well. So he can do a lot of different things, and he's also a great kid. So we're looking forward to seeing him here in camp and as the season starts to see what he brings to the table. But he certainly looks good, in our viewings last year.
And then when we continue with the back end, I mean, the experience might not be here with the guys, but I think the just pure talent level that you described with some of these younger players, experience will come, but some of this talent, it's tough to teach. Riley Rosenthal, a big defenseman that found his scoring touch last year with 19 goals at the Florida prep level. And then Max Burkholder, who's more of the, I would say, the new age of defensemen. And then Luke Grammer. He's a little bit older than those two, but doesn't have the USHL experience. But all three of those are supremely skilled on the blue line.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, with Riley and Max, they're both 03s. Riley's born in December of 2003, so he's only, both those guys are only going into junior year of high school. So they're going to be here in Dubuque for at least 2 seasons, and that's exciting for us. Like you said, Max is a very talented guy who can play on the power play and stuff like that. And Riley is a 2-way D. He can play in all situations as well. I mean, those guys are going to have to we got to be patient with them, though. I guess that's the thing. They're really, really good, talented young players, but it's not fair to the young players to expect them to do what they did at their youth level last year right off the bat. But with Thrun, Doyle, other guys, that they're coming back, they can teach those guys how to play in the USHL, and eventually they're really going to develop into themselves. And Luke Grammer too, he's a guy we offered Luke to play on our hockey team. He made our team out of camp in years past and decided to go back to Minnesota high school. He obviously had a great year there. He played in the state tournament with Moorhead, and he was nominated for Mr. Hockey. I mean, It's a talented player. It's a great kid. I mean, it's a good group of D, and it's going to be interesting to see what shakes out here after training camp.
You mentioned on the forward side of things last year, you had a pretty clear-cut idea of who were going to be the top guys to put the puck in the back of the net. And this year, it's not that there isn't the ability there. It's just that there's not as clear of a picture. But when we talked at main camp, one thing that was very clear to you was that we saw the next step from Stephen Halliday towards the end of last season, and you fully expect him to be one of the top guys in the USHL this year with all the experience and skill that he brings to the table.
Yeah, no doubt. Steven is awesome. Steven is all about it. He's a fighting saint through and through. He's done everything and more that's ever been expected of him, and we're going to lean on him for a lot this year, not just on the ice but off the ice as well. Like I don't know. I don't have enough good things to say about him. I love Steven. Excited to have him back, and just looking forward to seeing him take the next step here.
And you mentioned the depth of the players that are returning. When you mentioned guys like Riley Stewart and Reggie Millette and Tommy Middleton and Robert Cronin, what did you see last year through their development and what they brought to the team that makes you excited to have those players back as the forward group this year?
Well, with Reggie, Tommy, Stu and Robert, like they're tough to play against more than anything, right? I mean, nobody likes to go into a corner with Reggie. Nobody likes to go for a one-on-one battle with Tommy because those guys just leave it all out there. I think that's a huge thing. Like once they get used to the USHL, they were really, really difficult to play against. They gave our top guys some room to rest, and they went out there and they were not a liability by any means. They actually put up some points as well. But like that's the biggest thing for those guys that contributes with depth. They were honest with their roles. They worked really, really hard. And other teams didn't like to play against them. It's hard to match up against Reggie Millette and Tommy Middleton because they both skate hard, they compete hard, and they're tough, And so is Riley and Robert. So I think that some of those guys can take a step this season and do more, chip in more offensively. But that's up to them, right? They're gonna have those opportunities, and if they take it, then they'll move up the lineup. And if not, they're still contributing with great depth that is so important for a competitive team.
It seemed like last year the team, when talking to the players and when talking to Oliver, there was so much buy-in to the structure and the program that Oliver laid out for the entire team. And how big is it to have a good amount of those players back who already know the system to be able to be leaders and teach the newer players and the younger players on this year's team?
I mean, it's huge. We're very honest with that. We feel that our program and what we offer in Dubuque is up there with the best junior programs in the world. And we're even more honest with that it's not for everybody. If you're not into doing extra, if you're not into working hard, and if you're not into really, really, really wanting to get better, then we're not for us. You're not for us and we're not for you. So having those guys eager and excited to come back is awesome, especially with so many young kids this year, young talented players. They can look at those veteran guys, and it's going to be it's hard for a young guy to not get into the gym and work out when Reese Gaber is in the gym working out when he leads the league in scoring. That's the example last year, and there's going to be the same this season with some of the guys.
When we look at the forward group a little bit more in depth, you mentioned the 03s on the blue line with Riley Rosenthal and Max Burkholder being the younger players back there. The one grouping that I look at on the forwards, because they've been part of the Saints organization now for a couple years, Max Montez, Connor Kurth, and Kenny Connors, they all came into the Saints at the exact same time, part of the same draft class, and all took massive strides at their respective levels this last season. And even more so, they've all seen a little bit of time up at the USHL level. Connor's the only one to not yet play a USHL game. But when you look at those three, what I see is a lot of untapped potential that's just waiting to break out in the USHL, but maybe individually very quickly, what do each of them bring to the table?
Yeah, they're all really good players in the age group there. Kenny is a strong, big, he's big. Like for being a young kid, like Kenny Connors is big. Like he's a two-way center. He's not a guy that you go watch one game and say, oh, wow, he's awesome. Like when you watch him 5, 10, 15 times, you see that he brings the same element every single day. The consistency is something that would put a premium on, and he's a consistent two-way center with offensive upside. Connor, he's a shooter. He's a goal scorer. He's a guy that finishes plays. He's strong down low. Maybe not so much a track meet guy, but um, yeah, a player in tight games that can score a goal or two. He also grew up last season. He got better. His boots got better, which is good. And then Max is a weasel. He flies down the wing and scores a goal. Like he puts up a lot of points, and but he's still small and slight. He needs to add a little bit of muscle, but that comes with age and it comes with playing in the league. But all three are really good, but they're also all very different.
And I don't want to break down every single player just because we don't have that much time, but just in rounding out the forward group, you did bring in a couple other players that, again, don't necessarily have a ton of USHL experience, but do have a lot of junior and, in the case of PJ Fletcher, some NCAA experience. So, do you feel pretty good about the complement there of the mix of young to USHL experience from last year's team to new faces that still bring a lot of experience?
Yeah, we feel good about it for sure. I mean, but I also think that sitting here before the first league game is played, there's 16 or 14 USHL GMs that all feel good about their team this time of year. So yeah, we feel good. I mean, PJ's a guy we knew about. He's been around the block for a couple of times. He's been in different USHL organizations, and he's played junior hockey, played college. He's great. And you have Ryan Alexander, Finn Brown, guys that score goals and put up points in Canada. Ryan played internationally for Canada World Junior Challenge. Like, I do feel we have a great mix. I mean, Jake Goldowski's played 200 games of junior hockey. That's a solid player. So we feel good. I don't know exactly what the forward group is going to look like because other than that Halliday is going to put up points, I'm fairly sure that I'll put my money on that. But after that, we're going to have guys that are going to score. I'm interested in the American score, but who the leading scorers are going to be on this team is going to be interesting. I know there's going to be a couple of them, obviously, but who exactly they're going to be is something I'm excited to find out.
And finally, we look between the pipes, which is probably the area where there is the least amount of question marks, just because there was a plan in place, and obviously things still have to go right to make that plan happen. But Aiden McCarthy was the backup to Eric Portillo last year, although he was forced into much more of a starter role at a certain point due to injury. And then Hobie Hedquist was slated to come in this year, as he will be for training camp, to back up McCarthy. But when you look at those two, even though Hobie's the younger version of, or the younger player, he still has experience, not just in the regular season in the USHL, but he was very dominant last preseason when he was up with the team. So in looking at those, yeah, it's a young guy in Hobie, but it feels like he's way more experienced than his age would tell you.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, in Aiden, we have a guy who, I mean, you got to remember, Aiden played in the USHL. I mean, I don't know, the All-Star game, the BioSteel Prospect game or whatever. I mean, that says something. I mean, even though he played behind Eric, he was a good goalie in the league. In the first year, he had some ups and downs, which is as to be expected. But we expect him to be a good goalie in the USHL this season. And then Hobie, yeah, he's a talented guy. It's one thing to come in and play one game and do well. It's another thing to play a season and keep a consistent level. So we don't know that with Hobie yet. We have high hopes for him. Obviously, we drafted him high, and he's a future. I mean, he's a future starter. And when that is, that's up to him. But just like with the other three, it's like it's not fair to expect Hobie to come in and be a mega guy right away. I'm not saying he can't be, but that's not we don't count on him to do that. That's what we have Aiden for. But Hobie's going to be a great goalie in the league, and we love him. He's been around a lot, which is good experience for him.
Well, Kalle, we thank you for doing this, and to kind of put a bow on everything with training camp, hopefully starting here in less than a week's time. When you look at the multiple weeks you have of training camp before preseason and then the regular season starts, in the time from when training camp starts to when the regular season starts, with a lot of unknowns every single year, what are the hockey staff and the coaching staff hoping to learn about this team over the coming weeks so that you're in a decent position to start the season?
Well, first we got to figure out which 23 or 24 players we're keeping. I think we're going to bring in 27, maybe 28 guys. 23 or 24 coming out alive. I don't mean that literally. But to see who those guys are, and that's not necessarily going to mean it's going to be the most talented players. It's going to be the ones that fit, the ones that they're all about it, the ones that can survive in a weird year like this when there's going to be a lot of rules around how to live, with COVID being present. But we hope to find that out pretty quick, like see which guys are really, really into it, who really, really want to be Fighting Saints, and then fine tune the team from there.
I guess when you say for them to come out of it alive, it really explains why the Fighting Saints are for some people and aren't for some people, because that's a pretty big commitment if you're going in with that burden on your mind.
Yeah. That's obviously a joke, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
In all honesty, we're excited. I think the general consensus among the fan base is what we echoed at the start. Just happy to have a schedule and happy to have a training camp that should be starting here very shortly. But Kalle, again, thank you for the time. Thank you for all the insight on the team, and we look forward to speaking closer to the start of the regular season.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And I also want to say thanks to all the fans that are listening and for the fans that are standing by us here. It's always been a really, really hard year for everyone. And I want the fans to know how much we appreciate their support, and we can't wait to play hockey in front of you guys again. So thanks, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at the rink.